Okay, boys and girls, today you are going to be learning about a new type of art. It is called batik. Say batik. Good. Okay, so batik is a really cool art form where, as you can see, it says a unique fabric dyeing art. And so we're going to be using fabric. We are not going to be dyeing our fabric, we're going to be painting it. So batik typically involves hot wax, okay? And as you can imagine, if you've ever, gotten hot wax on your finger or anything, it does hurt. And so, I don't want anybody to hurt themselves while we're making this batik project. So I found a slightly different way to do batik so you don't have to use hot wax. So I'm going to talk to you guys more about that towards the end of this slideshow. But I want to teach you about the real deal, the actual art of batik so that you know about it. And then if you're really interested in batik and you really want to try it, when you get to high school, if you take, there's certain art classes that do projects with batik. So that there is a possibility that in your future you could do the real deal, okay? Okay, so what is batik? Batik is a method originally used in Java of producing colored designs on textiles by dyeing them, having first applied wax to the parts to be left undyed. It's also a visual artist specializing in batik, or can refer to the cloth that has been dyed using the batik method. So I know that picture's tiny up there in the corner, but if you look at it, that piece of fabric started off completely white. And the artist took hot liquefied wax and this special tool that I'll show you in a little bit, and they drew all of those plant designs onto that piece of fabric, that white fabric with the hot wax. Then, once the wax dried, it looks like they used maybe like a dropper to add all of those different colors of dye onto there. And anywhere that the wax was, the fabric resists the dye, meaning it doesn't allow the dye to seep into the fabric in those areas. And then, through some different steps, the wax is later removed, and anywhere that it was stays white. So if you guys have ever done a tie-dye before, tie-dye is very different from batik, but a tie-dye uses rubber bands to resist the dye in certain parts of that fabric. And so, the rubber bands are kind of similar to the wax in that they don't allow the dye to access certain parts of the fabric so it stays white, okay, or stays undyed. And, tie-dye is all about folding up fabric and tying it up before you dye it, where batik is different in that, your fabric stays flat and then you use that hot wax to keep some parts undyed. But there are some similarities, right, with the resistance of not letting dye in certain parts. Okay, so let's talk more about batik. So there are certain characteristics of batik. If you look at that one with the circle on the top right there, that the whole colored section, you can see all of those crackling lines in there. And if you've ever held a piece of wax that's dried and cooled off, if you've ever held it and maybe broke it in half, you'll notice that wax can crack. And so if you take a big area of fabric and you paint hot wax on it, let it dry, you can crackle it, and then anywhere that those little cracks are, the dye will seep into there, and that's how that crackle effect is made. So oftentimes there's white outlines, detailed designs, and a great use of line, shape, and pattern. And we'll see more examples of that here in a little bit, okay? So which one is batik? How can you tell? Okay, so it might be hard to see, but the one on the left with those flowers, that is actually sequins. And so you tell me, have I talked about sequins at all yet? I haven't, no. So that is not batik. The one in the middle is what? The one in the middle is tie-dye, and then that means that the one on the far right with the fish has to be batik. So let's look at it closer. Now, it might be a little bit difficult for you to see. It's not super dark, but in the background behind that fish, there is that crackling effect, and then there are some white outlines, and it is very, very detailed. Okay, so the history of batik. So samples of dye resistance pattern on cloth batik can be traced back 1,500 years ago to Egypt and the Middle East. So batik has been around for quite some time. Samples have also been found in Turkey, India, China, Japan, and West Africa from past centuries. However, none of these countries have developed batik to its present-day art form as the highly developed, intricate batik found on the island of Java in Indonesia. So batik has been around for a very long time, and it's been done all over the world. Okay, so you might be wondering, how is the wax applied to the fabric in this detailed way? Because if you think about hot wax, you might think of a candle, and it's like, well, what do they pour it on there? How is it applied on there? Well, it's applied using the tool that you see in the picture here, and it has, if you look at it, it says it's there, you can see it's T-J-A-N-T-I-N-G. So there's a silent T on the beginning of that word, so it's actually pronounced a janting tool. So say that, janting tool. Good. So a janting tool, as you can see in the picture there, it's kind of like a pen for the hot wax. So that you can see the person's hand is holding it. Typically, janting tools have a wooden handle, so that wood doesn't conduct heat quite so much, not as fast as metal would, and so they can stick that in the hot wax and not have to worry about the handle getting very hot. And then at the very end of the tool, you can probably see like a little metal piece that is like sticking up, and that is almost like a little cup. And at the top of it, it looks like black at the top. It's actually an opening, and that is a little metal cup right there. And the whole end of it is placed into a bowl of melted wax, so it's liquefied wax. So that little cup will fill up with hot wax, and then at the very end, the part that's touching the fabric, I don't know if you can see that little line, that's a little mini skinny tube that's connected onto the cup where the hot wax is held. And like I said, it acts like a pen so that the artist can then draw with that hot wax onto the fabric. And so that is how artists are able to get extremely detailed designs, okay? So now what I'm going to do, you guys are going to go to the next video. I am going to play for you 2 different videos on batik. The first one is about 3 minutes long. The second one is about 7 minutes long. So I want you guys to pay very close attention. And then at the end here, we'll talk about sketching your designs, okay?